Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to share a really useful and interesting workflow that you can use to push your content to the top of search results or AI output. So if you have something you wrote, or if you're a marketer or you're into SEO and you have some content that you would like to rank higher, this video is going to explain you how to do that using the new MCP server from InfraNodus that you can use inside Claude or Cursor AI. Using the standard chat interface, you will be able to analyze the content of a web page that you're working on, identify the main topics inside, then see what are the existing search results for these topics on Google, what you're missing, so what are the topics that you should be covering, and then enhance content this way. And then on top of that, also have the ability to analyze the search intent. So what are the keywords that people use when they search for it? Like, these results that Google shows here. So you will analyze 200 of those for 5 different search queries, understand what are the different combinations of keywords that people use to find your content, and then further ask the AI to enhance your content with this information, and then change that page so that it has the content that Google thinks it needs to rank higher in search results, because it will cover all these different topics that it thinks are important. And on top of that, it will also cater to these additional search queries that people use when they search for this content. So this video is going to be very useful for you, especially if you want to promote your content. If you're a researcher, a marketer, or a person who is into search engine optimization, you will see how you can use MCP servers and AI tools to enhance visibility of your content. And I use it myself all the time, and InfraNodus, the tool that I developed, that we'll be using also in this video, is positioned quite well for a lot of search queries. So it really worked for me pretty well during the last months, and I just want to share this workflow with you and show you how it works. So first I will show you what I'm doing, and then I will show you how you can set it up yourself. Okay, so you can see the results first, and then you can learn how you can do that. So I will be using for this demonstration a tool that is called Cursor. And Cursor is basically a text editor that is used by programmers to write code, but it can also open, obviously, text files and HTML pages. So if you have an Obsidian Vault, for instance, you could use it inside Cursor, but here I have my page that I want to optimize on the InfraNodus site, open inside Cursor. And the advantage of using Cursor is because it has a really powerful chat that is usually used by programmers to write code. But now I connected the InfraNodus MCP server to this chat so that I'm able to use these tools from InfraNodus to somehow enhance the capabilities of the model. If you don't know what an MCP server is, it's basically a nice way to connect different tools from an external service to the LLM. So for example, the InfraNodus server has a range of different tools available. They're shown here in Claude. You can generate a knowledge graph, you can identify content gaps, topical clusters, you can see what people are searching for when they search for something, what they find. So all these tools are available with their descriptions to the AI model here. So I can use Claude, or I can use Cursor, where this MCP server is also connected, to generate some additional insights. And I'm going to show you how it works in just a second. So let's say I have this page open, and now let's ask it the first question. What are the main topics and keywords on this page? It already knows the context because it's referring to this tab, which is open. And look what happens here. It read the content of the page, and then it realized what I'm asking it. And then now it's running the MCP tool. And the tool that it's running is the InfraNodus tool. So you can actually see it here. It's generating a request to the InfraNodus tool with the content of this page. And then when I click run, it's going to send it to InfraNodus and then receive the result. Now it's going to maybe ask some additional information from another tool that InfraNodus has. And here it provides the information that is provided by InfraNodus on that page. So that gives us a nice topical structure of this content. All right. Then the next step, what we can do after we see that, okay, these are the main topics. This page is talking about cognitive variability, mind antivirus, text network analysis, 4 states of variability, cognitive variability, all the main keywords and combinations. I can say, okay, so now that we have a list of the main topics and keywords that we identified on that page, let's see what people actually find on Google when they search for those keywords. So tell me what people find on Google when they search for the top keywords you identified, because here we want to see basically what people find and what Google considers important for this topic. And what happens here, you see it's going to launch the MCP tool from InfraNodus that's called Generate Google Search Graph. And here in queries, you actually see that it took 8 different queries, and then it's going to run the search to see the search results for all of those queries. And by the way, this is interesting because here you see it tells it you can submit only up to 5, so then it modifies its research, and then it only sends the 5 top queries. So even if there is an error coming from the server, it's going to fix it and it's going to perform the right action. So it tells us that based on Google search results, this is what I find. Okay, so here are the topics it identified. And that's interesting because now we can see that when people search for cognitive variability online, they find stuff on academic research, they find stuff also on text network analysis. That's because InfraNodus is in the results, but we also find results on adaptive thinking, on cognitive bias, and various other insights. Okay, so now that we have an overview of what people find when they search for the search queries, let's see if we're missing anything on this page. So we can say, okay, tell me what are the topics that people find on Google that I don't mention on this page. And look what's going to happen here. It's going to understand my request, and either it's going to run the comparison itself or it's going to use the tool that is available to it. In this case, it decided to use the tool because inside InfraNodus we have a special tool that can compare different texts and see what exists in one text that doesn't exist in the other. So I think it decided to use this tool, and let's see how it's going to run it and what results it's going to give. So as I said, it decided to run the generate difference graph, and it took some time to generate the text. And basically here it has 2 contexts. One is the text of the page, and the other one is the list of the search results that it got. And now it's going to run the comparison and see what is the difference, what exists in the search results that doesn't exist on this page. And once it generates a response, it's also going to identify the content gaps in this response. So let's see what it's going to do. It adds an additional tool from InfraNodus to get this extra insights, and then see what are the particular topics that we could focus on this page to make sure that we are actually covering all the different topics that people find when they search for it online on Google here. So right now you see it generated some gaps from InfraNodus, and then it gives us this information. So one thing that we don't mention that exists on Google are the missing medical and health applications. So for example, brain aging and cognitive decline, and cognitive variability as a marker for dementia and Alzheimer's disease, and how we could actually make sure that this disease doesn't happen by increasing our cognitive variability. So that's very interesting because it connects it to the real problem and need that people might have, right? And then there's another one on clinical and medical biomarkers. So for example, even talking about HRV as well, and then also developmental psychology. So children cognitive variability and how it contributes to learning and growth. And then also missing neuropsychological context, for instance, clinical populations, individual differences research, missing practical applications, business and leadership. So how, in fact, you could use adaptive thinking for leadership development, or how you could use it for critical thinking as well. So you see, there's quite a lot of ideas. So I can tell it, okay, generate some additional content based on adaptive thinking gap and cognitive decline with references. Okay, so look what's going to happen here. It's going to take all these insights that it generated by comparing Google search results and the content of this page, and then it's going to generate additional content sections that we can, of course, review to make sure that they're good quality and that there is no hallucinations, to then add them to this page. And this will ensure that Google, when it indexes this page, it's going to understand that, okay, it's actually talking about a lot of different stuff related to cognitive variability, but also adaptive thinking and how it can be good for health and how it can be good for leadership skills. So you see it added here some stuff on cognitive variability in research, from neuroscience to everyday thinking, and then it added another one on adaptive thinking and cognitive health. So that's great because this is some really good content that can be very useful for us. Now, the next thing that we can do is even better, because now we can say, okay, use the keywords you identified on this page and tell me what is the search intent related to them. And what's going to happen here is that it's going to use another tool that is available inside InfraNodus that shows you what people search for when they search for cognitive variability and the other keywords it identified. So you know this thing that appears here when you start typing in. This all comes from what people are actually searching for when they search for this topic, and this gives us a very good idea of what's happening in their heads when they think about this, and this will enable us to then generate much better content, because now you see it's using generate search queries graph. So now it's going to send it those 5 different keywords: cognitive variability, text network analysis, adaptive thinking, cognitive bias, and DFA, and then it will generate the graph, the list of the keywords that people use to find this stuff. And you see it actually tells me that cognitive variability has very low search volume, so that's not the keyword I should be focusing on when I'm creating this content. Text network analysis, few searches, it's a very niche thing, so that's why maybe people are not reading it. But for example, adaptive thinking is something that I could use much more. It's a term that I could include into this article, because then I know that more people are searching for it. So that's very good insight for me. And cognitive bias is the most highly searched term, so that's also something I should be focused on, and also maybe talk about how cognitive variability can positively affect the bias. So I think I like this adaptive thinking and cognitive bias. And then I'm going to say, okay, add some content about cognitive bias and adaptive thinking to this page then, using the insights you got from search intent. And look what happens here. It's going to take that content that it extracted, right? So the search queries that people use and the topical clusters that it identified there, because underneath it doesn't just get a list of the search terms, it actually gets a knowledge graph from InfraNodus that has all this very interesting content, right? And all the relations and topics inside. And now it's using this additional knowledge graph that it has underneath to generate highly relevant content that will address those topics. So we have something on cognitive variability in research and neuroscience and how it's good for the health of the brain. We have a section on adaptive thinking and cognitive health, and now it's going to add some more material that's going to touch upon these topics that we identify that people search for when they search for this stuff. So let's see what it's going to say. Okay, so what we have here is the new section that it generated, cognitive bias and the need for adaptive thinking, where it's actually deciding to connect those 2 topics together. So how it can be used to improve both cognitive bias and adaptive thinking. And it actually takes the content from my page, the framework that I described, that we use inside InfraNodus to increase cognitive variability, and then it somehow translates it into how you can also increase adaptivity of your thinking as well. And so that's really great, because it uses the language now that people use when they search for this content, but it's doing it in such a way that it fits into my original page. So here, as you can see, I generated some really interesting stuff based on the gap, based on what people find, based on what they search for. I augmented this page, and now instead of this, what I had before, I now have this, and there is much more information. You see there is this section now on adaptive thinking, clinical applications, then it's my content that I had before, and then it added something on cognitive bias and adaptive thinking, again, some examples of how you can use it, and adaptive thinking strategies. So of course then what I would do, I would review those changes and rewrite them in my own words, but that gives me a really nice structure and really relevant structure, because it's related to the topical clusters that people find on Google and that Google thinks are important. And it also relates to the search queries that people use to find this content. So I'm making sure I'm using the language that people use when they think about this stuff. So then for sure it's going to show up higher in the search results. So this is the workflow that you can use right inside Cursor. You can also actually use it inside Claude. So I could also do the same thing, upload the page here and ask the same questions in Claude. I have another video that I will link to in the description and also at the top here that explains how to use it with Claude. And it also has the same functionality. So if you prefer to use Claude Desktop or Claude Web, you can do that as well. But otherwise, I like to use Cursor or any text editor, because then I can just edit the content directly. I also told you that I would explain to you how to install it. So the easiest way is to go to Smithery. Smithery is a repository of MCP servers, and find the InfraNodus server here, and then you basically have the installation instructions here. You just click one-click install for Cursor or for Claude Desktop. It just tells you what you should run. or you can take the JSON and copy that in your settings in Claude. So basically you would go to your Claude and then open settings and then copy it there. So it's basically a very easy setup process. And then I advise you to quit the program and to launch it again, so it kind of refreshes everything. And then you can start using it straight away. You don't need an API code for the first several dozens of requests, but if you hit the API limit, then you go to configure and click on update configuration here, optional settings, and then you add your InfraNodus API key. So for that, you will need an account. But to try it out, you don't need any API keys at all. You can just start using it straight away from Smithery, and that's going to be very easy. If you would like to run it locally, we also have instructions on our website how you can run it locally. If you go to About Us, MCP server has all the instructions here, so you can retrieve it from here and also install it on your own computer to use with Claude Desktop or with Cursor AI without Smithery, but directly from your machine. So I hope you find this information useful. I really like this use case because I use it to actually promote my own content and to understand how I should write in order to reach as many people as possible. I think it's also a very useful workflow that can be used for marketing, for search engine optimization. So I'm really curious to hear about your feedback and what you think about it, and let me know if you also have any questions in the comments to this video below. Thank you.